Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today's legislation has been described as a landmark bill and the missing piece for patients and doctors around Australia. Through the Narcotics Drugs Amendment Bill 2016, the Turnbull government is proposing to allow patients and their doctor access to a safe, legal and reliable supply of medicinal cannabis products. I stand today in full support of this legislation, and I commend the work of the Minister for Health and the Turnbull government in helping to make this a reality. For people in my electorate on the Central Coast, like Michael from Calgary, it's a day that he never thought would come. Michael sent me a moving letter about his daughter Caitlin, who has a genetic fault that's linked to catastrophic epilepsy and uncontrollable seizures. At one stage, Michael said his daughter was suffering 1,400 seizures a day from the age of 6 months and was hospitalised 9 times in just 4 months. I'm advised that not even the attention of qualified health professionals in Sydney and the Central Coast could help Caitlin recover, with what some described as a 1 in 2 chance of dying before she was 18 years of age and a 100% chance of intellectual disability. When he first approached me and I met both Michael and Caitlin, Michael pleaded with me to do whatever we could as a government to help save his little girl. He wrote, "Please help us by doing what needs to be done to give the families of catastrophic epileptics and the terminally ill access to safe, legal and reliable medicinal cannabis." That, Madam Deputy Speaker, struck me as a heartfelt plea from a father about his daughter. I'm pleased to say that Michael has found some relief through an arrangement with the New South Wales State Government, which has set up a register for terminally ill users of medicinal cannabis. But in speaking with Michael this week, as this bill comes before the House, Michael emphasised to me that the federal government needs to take the lead. I'm pleased to say that today's legislation is a step forward that could change his and his daughter's situation for the better. Another family who may benefit from providing safe access to medicinal cannabis is Brendan from Umina Beach. Brendan's teenage daughter has been diagnosed with a rare disorder. When she's got an attack arising from this disorder, the pain is so severe that she's hospitalised for weeks. It's been a really difficult journey for them and for their family, and even their experience in obtaining a diagnosis was frustrating, devastating and confusing all at once. After numerous tests and quite a few hospital visits, Brendan was told there was nothing wrong with his daughter. A few more visits later, and the pain was eventually traced to the gallbladder. They were informed that if the gallbladder was removed and the pain attacks kept happening, then it was actually likely to be revealed as a very rare dysfunction known as the sphincter of Oddi dysfunction, more common in women over 40. Sure enough, the gallbladder was removed, but just a couple of months later, attacks returned. I'm told that Brendan's daughter was given 20 different types of medicines, but according to Brendan and his family, it only actually made it worse. By this time, of course, Brendan's wife was struggling to hold on to her job because of the frequent hospital visits, and I dare say that this is all too common an occurrence with many families in this situation. It was also, of course, taking quite an emotional toll on their other daughter, who was impacted every day by seeing her sister in pain. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm advised that the family were told that access to medicinal cannabis may have been beneficial to Brendan's daughter. And Brendan told me that they were desperate, begging for help, and felt they were at a dead end. Writing from beside his daughter's hospital bed, Brendan told me, "At the current moment our lives are ruined and the only thing that could help is medicinal cannabis oil." Thanks to this legislation, this may now be possible. Finally, I'd also like to share Claire's story, a resident of Davistown. Claire's husband suffered 2 melanomas. One was actually very aggressive. Claire said it was a very painful time for him, and although the heavy painkillers did give him some bearable relief, he was severely nauseated, couldn't eat and was having nightmares, all because of the medicine. He died in January 2000. Only after this terrible and devastating loss did Claire find that medicinal cannabis may have actually been able to help her husband through this awful time. She told me she would have accessed it at the time if she could, but of course it just wasn't possible. Thanks to this legislation, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have a positive story to be able to tell Michael, Brendan and Claire and many other families and residents on the Central Coast and indeed around our nation. But before I go on, it's also fair to say that what we are debating today has been contentious, at times misunderstood and described by critics as part of the slippery slope to decriminalisation of drugs. It is a discussion that we need to have, but I do believe that this is a separate debate. What we have in this legislation is a potential solution to assist people in painful and chronic situations who are being denied access to potentially legal drugs that could provide significant help. Doctors are at the centre of this decision-making process, which is strictly controlled. It opens the way for patients who need it most as a result of this legislation, as I've outlined in these three real-life stories, and helps them to be able to get access to the help they need, medical relief, as determined by medical practitioners. Part of making today possible has been the process undertaken by the Turnbull government in working closely with states and territories, law enforcement agencies and other stakeholders in recent months. I understand that the priority was to ensure this legislation was robust before bringing it to the Parliament and seeking to eliminate any potential for criminal involvement. Part of this involves establishing a safe, legal and reliable supply of locally grown cannabis so the drugs can be manufactured to help patients who need them. The solution outlined in this bill is one single nationally consistent cultivation scheme that meets all of our national and international obligations. Indeed, Australia is a signatory to a global convention which requires that production, manufacture, export, import, distribution, trade and possession of narcotic drugs such as cannabis is restricted exclusively to medical and scientific purposes. And in many cases, the long-term evidence is not yet complete about the ongoing use of various medicinal cannabis products, which we heard earlier this evening, which means the central role of medical professionals is to monitor and authorise its use, and this is so important. I'm advised that this setup will allow the government to closely track the development of cannabis products for medicinal use, all the way from cultivation to supply. Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe that this bill goes a long way towards assuring people in my electorate of Robertson about the importance of making medicinal cannabis available in an appropriate, legal and regulated way. It's bold, groundbreaking and essential policy, and I commend this bill to the House.